Okay, video number 4. We're still on the topic of waste, but at this point, we're trying to get toward a waste reduction, towards what we call the zero waste. And how to do that? Through the five R's approach, which is refuse, say no to what's not useful to you, reduce, trying to use minimalist tendencies, then reduce, trying to find another purpose of the stuff that you have, recycle, so making sure you sending to the recycling disposal, for example, and roads, which is in fact all of your organic waste to be going to a compost. So if we go quickly over some major one, recycle, it's kind of limited to the diversity of plastic. You may have noticed that we have, in terms of the plastic, we have a code. Oops, sorry for that. Let me go back. There is a code below each of your plastic recipient, and each code depends, in fact, provide information on the plastic, on the characteristic of plastic. And so let me go over this code I want to present you right here. So we have, in fact, 7 different type of code. These 7 kind of codes lead to 7 kind of recycling. And in general, cities or counties, depending on how they manage the recycling part, they only can afford a couple of recycling machines and recycling system. In the case of Merced, only 1 and 2 are accepted for recycling. Any number between 3 and 7 are not recycled. And again, usually those tend to be more expensive, and you will know, I don't think you will find a city where they will accept the 7, because unfortunately it's costing a lot of money and it's requiring specific way of treating that plastic. But so every time you recycle, make sure to look at the symbol that you can find. What I would think is sometimes it would be nicer for the manufacturer to make it more obvious, because sometimes it can be a trick to really identify the number. But know the number of your plastic you're using, and know the recycling management of your city or your county to know exactly what you can recycle. Once it's going to recycle, you have 2 options. It's either what we call a closed loop recycling, meaning what you recycle, maybe your bottle of plastic, or maybe your can, will be collected to make another bottle of plastic or another can. This is what we call closed loop recycling. You're making you're making the same product over and over. Or you're doing secondary recycling, which is accumulation of the same product to make another one. Over time, the problem of recycling is you're losing in terms of quality. It's what we call downgrading. And so there is this issue of recycling too much, because you're losing the property of the material and you're ending up with less quality. But technology has been improving on that side and make things less, let's say, has made things getting better over time. A city that has been doing great in terms of reducing its amount of waste has been San Francisco. And I invite you to watch this movie on the Zero Waste City to see how San Francisco, in particular, regarding to its biological organic waste, has been able to move towards a composting disposal that has allowed the city to drop considerably the amount of waste that was going to the landfill. So I will not play that movie now, but I invite you to watch it as we go.
Did you know that the urban...
You go into the recording page, that you will find this video below. What we need to do to obtain this zero waste target is, in fact, change our habits by reversing the practice of waste management, where we can see number 5 is disposal, which were the biggest portion in the 90s. We are in the transition of reversing the pyramid, ideally by 10 years or so, with disposal being the least option, with the less amount of waste going to disposal, and more going towards recycling, reusing, and preventing by doing some minimalist type of life, or not buying what you don't need. Another way to reduce the amount of waste we do is by changing our economy system, which is definitely a big deal. And as much as I would love that to happen, it will take a long time for that to happen. It's not about how can we recycle more. Recycling in there and it helps, but it's kind of limited. But ideally, instead of asking how can we recycle more, it's like how can we stop producing so much waste? Let's reduce the amount of waste we need to do. And so instead of having this idea of we take from nature, we make, and then we dispose, we waste it, we need to go towards what we call a circular economy, with a zero waste approach where everything is in some way a loop, more like what happened in an ecosystem, this idea of borrow, use, return. It's really more like the nutrient cycle inside of an ecosystem, developing what we call a circular economy. A circular economy will be made on two kind of loops, what can be following more like a biological process where we take, for example, for the food production, we produce the food, we consume it, and then after we compost of it, we're using the material, the food, as a nutrients, and we're closing the loop. And if it doesn't work with the nature side, we use what we call the technical metabolism, in which we making the product, we use the product, and we return it to where it comes from the manufacturer to make another product. So we're reusing the material of that product to make a new product. It's estimated for Europe, we don't have the number from the US, but the European Union could save easily $500 billion a year if its economy was becoming circular. So there is, of course, it's difficult to make because it's implying changing our economical system, not only for the country, but for the world, potentially going first with some loss, but over time, there is change, there is a big outcome of winning, of earning money instead of losing it. So how can we do that? Well, we can rethink our way of our industry, going into what we call an industrial ecology. The goal is to really mimic this ecosystem that we've been studying a couple of lectures ago, with the idea that the waste of an industry, of a production site, will become the energy, a byproduct for a secondary industry. And the waste of people will become a byproduct for another industry, or will become a nutrient from that industry. And so you're trying to connect all of the industries and consumers together, the logistics together, to close that loop. Looks pretty complex, but it's working. And if it's well established, it's allowing to have a closed loop system that allows to use the waste as resources and to not produce, or at least to reduce as much as possible the waste. This is, in fact, coming with this idea of what we call the cradle to cradle, which is closing the loop of our production by looking at the garbage as an eternal resource, by rethinking the way we manufacture things, closer
Let
to
me
what we call an
introduce
ecosystem
strategy
cycle.
2. Rethink the way we make things and use materials effectively. This is not about being less bad, but about becoming 100% good by improving quality. We can start working from a vision where waste equals food. This is what Michael Brangart and William Madonna have developed and named Cradle to Cradle. So while a good start is to reduce the consumption of materials and stimulate recycling and minimize the amount of energy used in a product life cycle, Cradle to Cradle is about keeping all materials in continuous cycles, stimulating the use of renewable energy only, and celebrating diversity. This requires a different design approach. The design of a product is optimized for its functionality, beauty, and quality to fulfill the need of the customer. But in addition, the design is thought through on how to disassemble it and how the used materials are valuable to nature or as resources for the production of new products.
So with that, we want really to rethink our production system, and in fact, not only focusing on recycle, reduce, which works pretty well on the efficiency, but we can be more effective if we rethink the way we make our product. We need to rethink the way that we make our products so they are easier to be disposed. We need to rethink our product so they are easier to be reused by someone else, that they have another purpose, or they can be sold, they can be traded easily to someone else. We need to rethink our product so we can also increase the upcycling. I remember I was telling you about the fact that by recycling, you're downgrading the quality of your product. Well, upcycling is the idea that you can reuse that product to make it even better. Maybe taking your old cell phone to make a newer cell phone. That's the idea. And that is, in fact, the idea of this cradle-to-cradle system, this circular economy that is different from the linear economy, or this idea of cradle-to-grave, where you take, you make, and you throw. With that, we're done with this part of the lecture. I invite you to join me for the final video, which will be on looking at how we can design products to make them more sustainable. See you very soon.